Dustin Poirier got asked a question, guys, and it was a list. There was a list that was put in front of him. My understanding is this was on the Anik Florian podcast, and it went very similar to this. There's a list of names. Colby Covington was on that list. Conor McGregor was on that list. They go through the list and they ask Poirier, "Are you doing one more fight?" Poirier says, "Yeah." That's okay. And they're assuming that he has information that he can't completely reveal. And Poirier confirms for them that if he does one more fight, you got to understand, he goes back to the word if, and I know that makes it sound like is he in or out. Will it be a name from that list? Can that much be assured? And a lot of the names on the list were 170-pounders. By example, Colby. Nate Diaz was on the list. He said, "Will you be fighting somebody from that list?" And Poirier said yes. He went as far as to say yes. Who do you think that name would be? And as you stare at that list, it's a situation where it sure seems to make a lot of sense. If you're doing for one night, if you're trying to plan a big fight for Poirier, there were so many things on that list, including the grudge match with Colby. You got two high-ranked guys. You got both guys that have whipped a lot of people, and both guys that aren't completely defined in what it is that they want to do next or what their goals still are, right? Like, I mean, it's one of these situations, and I don't want you to think I'm steering you in the direction of it's going to be Poirier versus Colby. I'm using that example from this list as I ask you, who do you think that it will be? Because it's a colossally difficult situation for the UFC. It's colossally difficult in that there's very few times in history this has ever been done. It has been a mistake for people to ever state that their next fight will be their last fight prior to having the bout agreement. And it's been that way for a couple of reasons. First off, the UFC go, ooh, right, they'll look at the calendar and think about where they're going to put things, and there's a lot of strategic reasons for your top fights, for your co-main event on up. Title fights, co-main events, main events, there's a lot of strategies put in there, but there's a level of strategy, even if less so, for everything that you see on the main card. And there's much less of a strategy, even though there still is one, for the things that you see under that race. So the higher you go, the more thought that it's going to be. And the UFC does not love to make a guy his last fight, because now all of a sudden you're just playing for that night. There's not a bounce, there's not a story to tell, there's not a return. What are we going to do? And so if you have this information ahead of time, you can bring in one of these younger guys or this up-and-comer, and he tries to get some shine. I mean, that's just the game, whether it works or not. This is the fight game, and off you go, right? I'm stating the obvious for you guys. But when you're told ahead of time that it's going to be the last fight, if there's any kind of a push and a pull with the contract, all of a sudden those fights start to get moved. And so all of a sudden you start looking at that column and saying, okay, who fits a similar bill? And we do have stars in this sport where it doesn't matter. The outcome of their fight doesn't matter. I believe that both Diaz's go into that situation. Ronda Rousey was in that situation. Brock Lesnar was in that situation. There was a period of time George Masvidal was in that situation. It's just very, very rare. The Conor McGregor, you didn't have to win your last one. You didn't have to win the last five. Your next one doesn't have to be a title fight. Neither is the one after that. And you're going to sell out arenas. I think that Dustin Poirier belongs in that same category. I think that it's a very rare island, but I do think that that's somewhere where Poirier has the level of fans that if he's fighting at 55 for belts, or he's fighting at 70 just because, or they're going to make up a weight of 168 and a quarter, and they're going to do it for 4 rounds instead of 3 or 5, like it's one of those situations that it's going to work. You now need a B-side in that same spot, right? You now need the guy that's going to walk first to be in a similar spot. And we've got him, and you can find him. As a matter of fact, I think I just did. I think when I named Conor McGregor, I think it falls into that same category. I think that the idea of Nate Diaz works all day long. I just don't like to have to then remind you that Nate is not currently under contract. Okay, well, let's stick with the idea of Diaz. Nick has a fight coming up with Luque, of which Nick is not favored to win, but what if he does? He is then going to get to do something again. He's going to then get another match. Who would that be against? And all of a sudden, Poirier starts to make a little bit more sense. And these are predictions that I'm giving for you. I'm sharing for you. It starts to be a very tough spot. Doing the matchmaking for a situation when you have a company, and the UFC has fiercely adhered to this brand promise, the best will fight the best. This organization is for champions or guys who can be champion. And the UFC has fiercely adhered to that. So you'd be looking at something that, hey, this is for fun, and this is for the fans, and these are for the guys, and this is a special moment. All those things are true. All of them. Every 10 years, we get to have a little bit of fun. But now that we've got a guy, we need the other guy. And that same type of theory is what would have to happen if you had the return of Khabib. And I, for one, am not willing to let go of the idea that this new Khabib and Conor that is being released, that there was press releases for, that reliving their fight is something that happened just because. I'm not ready to do that. So if you are talking about a potential return of Khabib, which I am not predicting for you, but I'll let you know that talk is happening. If you're going to do that, and that is going to bring us to 30-0, if that's the great big plan, you now not only need to do a great fight for the fans that's fun, that doesn't affect titles, doesn't affect rankings, and might not even done at your weight class for Poirier plus whoever his opponent is going to be. You're now going to need to do that again for Khabib versus whoever that opponent is going to be. And I'm here to tell you, and I feel like I could name them, whether I wanted to go back to James Toney, if I wanted to fast forward to CM Punk, that there are things that are done in this sport for fun about every 10 years. And if all the statements that I'm giving you right now are to be true, if all of those are to come true, it's very hard for them to be true at the same time, and it would go against the policy of we could have fun every 10 years. We'd be having to have fun multiple times at once. And it just adds to a confusion within the speculation as to how you would do it. And I get people that come to me all the time that tell me I should work with the UFC, let me get a resume. And they're being serious. They really would like for me to make a contact and build that bridge and to show me how great they are at running this, to show me what a wonderful fight mind they have. They'll put Conor against somebody and tell me how well that's going to draw, right? Which it would take no level of expertise. They'll take a title fight and who they're going to have those guys fight. And then the winner of this fight and the winner of this fight are going to fight up. And that could be in Madison Square Garden. And everybody in the world's going to want to see it. I'm looking at going, yeah, man, there's nothing here that is untrue except for you thinking that you have an exceptional talent or you have a rare idea that the whole rest of the universe didn't also have. But this one does put you in a tough spot when you're doing matchmaking. And instead of trying to do both at once, because I know that you guys don't believe there's as much to the conversation of Khabib having a conversation as I'm telling you. I keep presenting it to you like a question. I'm giving you information right now. With a caveat that I don't predict for you it goes anywhere. The conversation is happening. That I'm telling you. And the conversation is one that's being had to a level that it wasn't many years ago. That I'm giving you. But secondary, you have Poirier, who wants to do one more fight, who deserves it, and who's going to get it. And he's got 2 weight classes to cover to find that right opponent. He's got 55 and he's got 70. It's going to be dealer's choice. You put together the ultimate fight that you would like to see him have. Who would that opponent be?